Number 1. 1969 Ford Galaxy XL convertible, offered at $15,500 and currently located in Greenwood, Indiana. In my opinion, this 1969 Ford Galaxy XL represents exactly what made American full-size convertibles so special during the late 1960s. It's not a high-end restored show car, but more of a real-world classic that still keeps its personality and road presence intact. The black exterior combined with the burgundy interior gives it a strong and classic look that feels very period-correct and timeless. From what I see, the 351 Windsor V8 paired with an automatic transmission makes this more of a relaxed cruiser than a performance build. The Windsor engine is known for being dependable and easy to live with, so this setup feels ideal for weekend drives, car meets, or long highway cruising rather than aggressive driving. One thing that stands out to me is the amount of comfort and convenience features it still retains. Power steering, power brakes, and especially the power convertible top make a big difference in how enjoyable this car would be to actually use. The hidden headlights also add a nice vintage touch that gives it more character compared to many other full-size cars of the same era. The factory bucket seats and long center console are also a highlight in my opinion. That configuration is not as common as the standard bench seat layout, so it adds a bit of rarity and a more sporty feel inside the cabin, even though the car itself is still a big cruiser. At the same time, I would say this is not a perfect restoration. The seller mentions a repaint, some minor imperfections, and possible older body filler work on the rear quarter area. There's also a missing console lid. But for a car of this age, especially one described as garage stored with solid frame and floors, these issues feel more like normal classic car character rather than major problems. Overall, my opinion is that this Galaxy XL is best suited for someone who wants a usable classic rather than a trailer queen. It has the right look, the right engine, and enough comfort features to actually enjoy driving it without being overly worried about perfection. It feels like a true drive and enjoy type of classic convertible. Number 2. 1966 Oldsmobile Starfire, offered at $17,000 and currently located in Elwood, Illinois. From my point of view, this Starfire looks like one of those classic cars that's been set up more for enjoyment than originality. The 425 V8 alone already makes it an interesting full-size cruiser, because engines like this are known for strong torque and smooth highway driving rather than high-rev performance. So in my opinion, this is not a race-type build, but more of a relaxed street cruiser. What stands out to me is the direction the build has taken. The car has a lot of modern touches like upgraded wheels, a strong audio system, and a Bluetooth amplifier. Personally, I see this as a sign that the car is meant to be driven and enjoyed today, not just stored for shows. Some people might prefer full factory originality, but for me, this kind of setup makes it more practical for daily weekend use. I also think the seller focusing on rust-free structure and solid floors is a very important point. In classic cars, especially mid-1960s American steel bodies, condition underneath the car matters more than anything you can see on the surface. So if that part is really solid as described, that already puts the car in a good category. Another thing I notice is that the seller is including extra parts like a disc brake conversion kit and AC components. In my opinion, that's actually a good value factor because it gives the next owner options. You can keep it simple and drive it as is, or slowly upgrade it into a more modern driving classic. At the same time, I would say this is not a perfect show car. The drum brakes still being installed and the aftermarket wheels show that this is more of a driver build than a collector-grade restoration. So anyone expecting a fully original museum piece might not see it the same way. Overall, my opinion is that this 1966 Oldsmobile Starfire is best viewed as a comfortable classic cruiser with strong V8 power and modern usability upgrades. It's the type of car you buy if you want to actually enjoy driving a classic American V8 rather than just keeping it as a garage display. Number 3. 1963 Ford Fairlane 500 Hardtop, offered at $27,000 and currently located in Durant, Iowa. In my opinion, this 1963 Ford Fairlane 500 presents itself as a well-balanced classic that sits in a very attractive driver-quality cruiser category rather than a full show restoration or heavily modified build. From the information provided, it seems like a car that prioritizes usability and enjoyment on the road while still maintaining the original character of early 1960s Ford design. The combination of the Ford 289 V8 paired with a 3-speed automatic gives it a straightforward and easy-to-live-with driving setup. In my view, this is one of the reasons cars like this remain appealing today. They are not overly complicated, yet still provide enough classic V8 performance to make cruising enjoyable without feeling stressful or demanding. The 289, in particular, is known for being a reliable and well-rounded engine, which adds confidence for anyone looking to actually drive the car regularly rather than just store it. What stands out to me as a positive point is the mention of a stock interior in great condition. In the classic car world, interior originality or well-preserved condition often carries more emotional value than even mechanical upgrades, because it preserves the feeling of the era. A clean interior also suggests the car has been reasonably cared for over time, even if it is not a fully restored example. The presence of an aftermarket radiator and aftermarket air conditioning tells me that the previous owner likely focused on making the car more usable in modern conditions. From my perspective, this is a practical approach rather than a purist restoration. It suggests the goal was to improve reliability and comfort, especially for driving in warmer climates or during longer trips. These kinds of upgrades don't change the character of the car dramatically, but they do make ownership significantly easier. The fact that it is described as a Tennessee car and includes underside photos is also something I view positively. Cars from southern states often tend to have less structural rust compared to vehicles exposed to harsh winters and road salt. While I would still want to inspect it closely, that detail generally leans in a favorable direction regarding body condition. One interesting aspect is the seller's statement that it runs great. While that is a simple phrase, in the classic car market it usually indicates that the vehicle is already in a usable state rather than being a non-running project. For many buyers, that alone can make a big difference, because it shifts the car from a restoration project to an immediate driver. If I had to give a balanced opinion, I would say this Fairlane 500 feels like a solid entry point into classic Ford ownership for someone who wants a combination of vintage styling, V8 character, and basic comfort upgrades without stepping into the higher costs of fully restored or collector-grade vehicles. It does not appear to be a rare or heavily documented showpiece, but rather a practical classic that can be enjoyed and gradually improved over time. Overall, my impression is that this 1963 Ford Fairlane 500 is best suited for someone who values classic design and driving enjoyment more than perfection or investment-grade originality. It seems to offer a good mix of usability, simplicity, and vintage charm, which is often exactly what makes a classic car enjoyable in real-world ownership. Number 4, 1968 Chevrolet Chevelle SS Tribute, offered at $45,000 and currently located in Norwalk, Iowa. From my perspective, this is one of those builds that immediately grabs attention because it blends classic muscle car styling with modern big block power in a very straightforward way. The 1968 Chevelle is already one of the most recognizable shapes from the golden era of American performance, and even as a tribute car, it still carries that strong visual identity that enthusiasts instantly connect with. In my opinion, what stands out most here is the combination of appearance and engine choice. The car is styled to resemble a 396 SS, which is already a desirable look on its own, but underneath the hood it goes a step further with a 454 cubic inch big block V8. That alone changes the personality of the car quite a bit, because the 454 is known for its strong torque delivery and raw, old-school muscle feel. It's not subtle, and it's not trying to be. This is a setup built for presence and straight-line power. From a driving perspective, I see this kind of build as more of a weekend cruiser or show-and-go type of car rather than something aimed at precision handling or daily practicality. The automatic transmission reinforces that idea, making it more about relaxed cruising and enjoying the sound and feel of the big block engine rather than constantly working through gears. The interior setup with bucket seats also adds to that classic muscle car character. It keeps the cabin simple and focused, which is really in line with what these cars originally represented: style, performance, and a bit of attitude without unnecessary complexity. One thing I always consider with tribute builds like this is how the value is perceived. Personally, I see them as being driven more by emotional appeal than strict originality. Since this is not a factory SS, the value comes from the overall execution, condition, and driving experience rather than collector authenticity. That's not necessarily a negative, it just places the car in a different category for buyers who prioritize enjoyment over strict numbers matching originality. The note that money is still owed on the vehicle is something I would pay attention to as well, not because it affects how the car drives, but because it's part of the ownership situation that would need to be clarified before any serious purchase. It's a practical detail that matters in real-world transactions. At $45,000, I see this Chevelle SS Tribute as sitting in a competitive space where condition, build quality, and overall presence really matter. The Chevelle platform itself is always in demand, and the combination of a 454 big block and classic SS styling will naturally appeal to a wide range of muscle car enthusiasts. Overall, my opinion is that this is a strong visual and performance-oriented classic rather than a factory collector piece. It's the kind of car that is meant to be seen, heard, and enjoyed on the road, especially at weekend events or cruises where big block muscle cars still get the attention they were originally built for. Number 5. 1972 Ford Gran Torino Sport Coupe 2D, offered at $9,500 and currently located in Omaha, Nebraska. In my opinion, this car sits in a pretty interesting and honestly practical spot in the classic car market. It's not a full restoration project, but it's also not a perfect show car. It lands right in that middle ground where you can actually buy it, drive it, and slowly improve it over time instead of tearing it completely apart from day one. What stands out first is that it already runs, drives, and stops. That alone puts it ahead of a lot of similar classics in this price range. A lot of old muscle-era cars you see for under $10,000 are either missing major components or haven't moved in years. This one, at least based on the listing, is already functioning as a weekend cruiser. The 302 V8 isn't anything extreme, but in my view that actually fits the personality of a Gran Torino Sport. It's more of a relaxed cruiser with muscle car styling than a full-blown performance build. So instead of chasing horsepower numbers, this setup feels more about enjoying the classic driving experience. Long hood, V8 rumble, and easy cruising. The legal side also adds confidence here. It has a clean title in the seller's name, is currently registered, insured, and even plated. That usually tells me the car has been consistently maintained and actually used on the road, not just stored and flipped. That kind of paperwork situation reduces a lot of risk for a potential buyer. On the condition side, there are some rust spots and the roof area needs attention before the vinyl top goes on. To me, that sounds pretty typical for a 1970s Ford that hasn't had a full restoration. It doesn't automatically scare me off, but it does mean there's still some body work in the future if someone wants it cleaner or more original looking. The seller also mentions receipts for work done, which is another positive point. It suggests this isn't a neglected project, but a car that has been maintained and gradually improved. That history matters because it gives you a better idea of what has already been addressed mechanically. Overall, I would describe this Gran Torino as a driver-quality classic rather than a collector-grade car. It's something you buy because you want to enjoy it now, not something you park in a garage and wait for investment value alone. At $9,500, the value here really depends on expectations. If someone is looking for a perfect, rust-free, fully restored muscle car, this is not it. But if the goal is to own a classic Ford with V8 character that can be driven immediately and improved over time, then this actually makes a lot of sense. So in my view, this 1972 Gran Torino Sport is a solid entry-level classic, honest, usable, and still full of that old-school American muscle car feel without requiring an immediate full rebuild. Number 6. 1960 Pontiac Catalina Convertible, offered at $32,000 and currently located in Cottage Grove, Wisconsin. In my opinion, this 1960 Pontiac Catalina Convertible is a great example of early 1960s American design when style and comfort were just as important as performance. The burgundy exterior paired with a matching interior gives it a very classic, elegant look that fits perfectly with Pontiac's bold design language from that era. From what I understand, The 389 cubic inch V8 with a 4-barrel carburetor is one of the strongest parts of this car. That engine alone already gives it solid cruising power and a smooth driving character that suits a full-size convertible like this. The automatic transmission also keeps it simple and easy to enjoy, which is really the point of a car like this. It's also important that this is an older restoration, not a fresh build. In my opinion, that usually means the car has already been enjoyed and sorted out over time, which can be a good thing for someone who just wants to drive rather than fix everything from scratch. The fact that it runs and drives well and comes with service records and even the original brochure adds a nice layer of history to it. The cloth interior redo also sounds like a comfort-focused update, making the cabin more usable while still keeping a classic feel. For a convertible from this period, comfort and cruising experience really matter more than perfection, and this car seems to lean in that direction. Overall, my opinion is that this Catalina is best for someone who appreciates vintage style and wants a classic cruiser with documented history and usable condition. It's not necessarily a show-level restoration, but more of a well-kept driver that still carries the charm and presence of early 1960s Pontiac design. Number 7, 1969 Buick Wildcat, offered at $14,500 and currently located in Fargo, North Dakota. From my point of view, this Wildcat is the kind of classic that is more about lifestyle than perfection. It's not described as a show-quality restoration, but more like a driver-focused convertible that's meant to be enjoyed on warm days, especially for casual cruising. What stands out to me first is the 455 cubic inch V8. In my opinion, that's the real highlight of this car. Engines like this are known for strong low-end torque and smooth power delivery, which fits perfectly with a full-size Buick convertible. It's not a sporty setup, but more of a relaxed, effortless driving experience where the car feels strong without needing high RPMs. I also noticed the long ownership and seasonal use history. From what's described, it has been driven mainly in summer and stored in a heated garage for many years. In my opinion, that's a positive sign because it usually helps preserve older classics better, especially in colder regions where rust and weather damage can become a serious issue. The seller also mentions family use, like cruising with grandkids and short trips to places like Dairy Queen. Personally, I think that adds more character to the listing because it shows the car has been part of real-life use, not just stored as a collection piece. That kind of usage often means the car is maintained in a practical, enjoy-it-as-it-is condition. At the same time, I would say this is not a fully restored or high-end collector convertible. The seller is honest that it's not top show condition. So in my opinion, buyers should expect a solid driver, not a perfect investment-grade classic. Another important point is rarity. The production numbers for 1969 Wildcat convertibles are relatively low compared to mass-market cars. So I think that adds some value, especially for enthusiasts who like full-size GM convertibles from this era. Overall, my opinion is that this 1969 Buick Wildcat is a relaxed big-block cruiser that focuses more on comfort, nostalgia, and open-air driving enjoyment. It's the type of car you buy not to compete in shows, but to actually drive, enjoy summer evenings, and experience the classic American convertible lifestyle. Number 8, 1967 Chevrolet Malibu, offered at $44,900 and currently located in Dubuque, Iowa. In my opinion, this 1967 Chevelle Malibu looks like a well-built classic that leans more toward a reliable street cruiser with performance upgrades rather than a strict factory original restoration. It has the kind of setup that is clearly focused on driving enjoyment, which is often what makes cars like this more appealing for real-world use. The 350 GM Goodwrench crate motor stands out as one of the strongest points. From my perspective, choosing a crate engine is usually a practical decision because it prioritizes reliability and consistency over originality. Paired with the angle cam, it likely gives the car a more aggressive and responsive feel compared to a stock small block. That combination suggests the car is built to be driven and enjoyed, not just displayed. The TH350 automatic transmission is another solid and proven choice. In my opinion, this transmission fits the overall theme of the car perfectly: simple, durable, and capable of handling mild performance upgrades without requiring constant attention. It is the kind of setup that makes the car easier to live with in everyday cruising situations. Supporting upgrades like the Mallory ignition system, power steering, and power brakes show that the focus here was clearly on drivability. From a practical standpoint, these features make a classic muscle-era car significantly more comfortable and safer to operate in modern traffic. It turns what could have been a more demanding old-school muscle car into something much more accessible. The V-Force exhaust system likely adds a deeper and more aggressive sound character, which in my opinion is an important part of the classic Chevy experience. Sound is a big part of why people enjoy these cars, and a well-tuned small block with a performance exhaust usually delivers that satisfying muscle car tone without being overly extreme. The listing notes only about 1,234 miles, which I would interpret as mileage since the build or restoration work rather than the car's total lifetime mileage. In my view, that suggests the drivetrain is still relatively fresh and has not been heavily used since the upgrades were completed. One detail that stands out is the 135 VIN designation, indicating it is a Malibu rather than a factory SS. From my perspective, this matters more to purists and collectors than to drivers. While it may not carry the same factory performance pedigree as an SS model, it also often makes the car more approachable in terms of pricing while still delivering a very similar driving experience when properly built. Overall, my opinion is that this 1967 Malibu is best described as a well-executed Restomod-style cruiser that prioritizes performance, reliability, and usability over strict originality. It seems ideal for someone who wants the classic Chevelle look with modernized mechanical confidence and a strong street driving character. It may not be a rare collector-grade factory SS, but it does appear to be a thoughtfully upgraded classic that is ready to be driven and enjoyed, which in many cases is exactly what buyers in this segment are looking for. Number 9. 1978 Pontiac Bonneville, offered at $2,000 and currently located in Antwerp, Ohio. From my perspective, this is one of those classic full-size Pontiacs that sits more in the project opportunity category than anything else, but it still has some interesting points that make it worth looking at depending on what someone wants out of a vintage car. The Bonneville in this generation represents the end of the big American cruiser era before downsizing really took over in the late 1970s and early 1980s. It was built to be comfortable, spacious, and smooth on the road, with a strong focus on highway cruising rather than performance. Even today, you can still see that design philosophy in how these cars were put together. In my opinion, the biggest limitation with this specific example is the non-running 301 cubic inch engine. While the 301 Pontiac V8 is known for being fairly lightweight and efficient compared to larger engines of its time, a non-running condition immediately places this car into a restoration or mechanical revival category. It means the next owner would need to invest time and likely money just to get it back to a basic driving state. That said, I do see some positives here that shouldn't be ignored. The interior being described as good is a strong point, especially for a car in this price range. Interior restoration can often become one of the most expensive parts of reviving a classic, so having a usable cabin gives the car a better starting position than many other $2,000 project vehicles. The mention of only little rust is also important. In my view, rust condition is often the deciding factor in whether a project car is worth taking on or not. If the structure is relatively solid, then even a non-running engine becomes less of a concern because the foundation of the car is still usable. At this price point, I don't really see this Bonneville as a turnkey classic or even a weekend cruiser yet. Instead, it feels more like a long-term project for someone who enjoys bringing older full-size American cars back to life. It has potential, but it clearly needs work before it can deliver the kind of smooth driving experience these cars were originally known for. The red-on-red color combination also gives it a strong visual identity once restored. Even though it's currently not running, it's easy to imagine how a clean, finished Bonneville of this era could stand out simply because of its size and classic Pontiac styling. Overall, my opinion is that this 1978 Pontiac Bonneville makes sense only for someone who is specifically looking for a low-cost entry point into a restoration project. It's not about immediate enjoyment. It's about potential. And at $2,000, that potential is really what you're paying for here. For the right person with time, tools, and patience, it could eventually become a solid cruiser. But in its current condition, it's clearly a starting point rather than a finished classic. Number 10, 1973 Ford Maverick, offered at $25,000 and currently located in Lake City, Minnesota. In my opinion, this is one of those listings where the appeal comes almost entirely from originality and mileage rather than performance or modification. A 1973 Maverick with a 302 V8 and only around 20,000 miles, if that mileage is accurate, puts it into a very specific category of classic cars that are more about preservation than restoration. What stands out first is the all-original claim. In today's classic car market, that alone can carry a lot of weight. Most Mavericks you see have been modified, repainted, or turned into budget muscle builds. Finding one that's still close to factory condition makes it more of a time capsule than just another old Ford coupe. The 302 V8 is a big part of the appeal here too. It's not a high-strung performance engine, but it's known for being reliable, simple, and easy to live with. In a lightweight Maverick, it gives just enough power to make the car feel fun without turning it into something unmanageable. So from a driving standpoint, I'd describe it as more of a relaxed cruiser with classic V8 character rather than a true muscle car. The fact that this car is being sold for an older friend also gives it a bit of a long-term ownership feel. Cars like this are often maintained carefully over the years rather than heavily driven or abused, which can explain the low mileage claim. Still, with classics, mileage should always be taken as something to verify rather than assume. At $25,000, the price is where things get a bit more opinion-based. For some buyers, that number might feel high for a Maverick, since it's not traditionally seen as a top-tier muscle car like a Mustang or Torino. But when you factor in originality, condition, and potential survivor status, the value proposition becomes more about rarity than performance. From a collector's perspective, I'd say this car sits in that preserved survivor niche. It's not something you buy to heavily modify or rebuild. It's more of a car you preserve, maintain, and enjoy as an example of early 70s Ford simplicity. Visually, the Maverick has a very clean and straightforward design. It doesn't rely on aggressive styling or oversized presence. Instead, it has that compact, no-nonsense Ford look that makes it easy to appreciate in its original form. That simplicity is actually part of its charm, especially when it hasn't been heavily altered. Overall, my take is that this 1973 Maverick is less about power or performance and more about authenticity. If the mileage and originality checks out, it's the kind of car that appeals to someone who values untouched classics over modified builds. It's not trying to be something it's not, and in today's market, that honesty is often what makes a car interesting. Number 11, 1970 Pontiac Catalina, offered at $5,000 and currently located in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. In my opinion, this 1970 Pontiac Catalina is more of a budget project car than a ready-to-drive classic, but it still has some interesting potential depending on what someone is looking for. The fact that it's priced at only $5,000 immediately shows that this is not a finished or problem-free vehicle, but rather an entry-level classic for someone willing to put in work. From a mechanical point of view, the 400 V8 is definitely the most valuable part of the car. Even though it needs a new camshaft, the seller mentions there is no noise from the bottom end or valve train, which could be a positive sign that the engine block itself may still be healthy. However, since the car still needs to be towed, it's clearly not in drivable condition right now. Structurally, I think the biggest advantage here is that the frame and floor are described as solid. For older Pontiacs, especially ones from colder climates, rust is usually the deal breaker. In this case, the rust is mainly in the lower quarter panels, which is common and more manageable compared to structural rust. Visually and condition-wise, it's not a clean or restored example, but more of a survivor with wear and age showing. The black exterior with green interior is a fairly classic combination, but it's not really about appearance at this stage. It's more about foundation and potential. Overall, my opinion is that this Catalina is only a good option for someone who wants a project and understands classic car restoration. It's not something you buy and enjoy immediately, but rather something you slowly bring back to life. For the price, it could be a decent starting point, but only if the buyer is prepared for engine work and body repair. Number 12, 1963 Ford Falcon, offered at $11,500 and currently located in Peshtigo, Wisconsin. From my point of view, this Falcon feels like a simple classic project that's already partially started, but not fully finished. It's the kind of car that sits in that middle zone where it's not a complete restoration, but also not a total untouched original. So it really depends on what the buyer is looking for. What stands out to me first is the straight-six engine with the 3-on-the-tree manual transmission. In my opinion, this setup is more about basic driving experience than performance. It's slow, simple, and easy to maintain, but it gives that old-school mechanical feeling that a lot of classic car enthusiasts actually enjoy today. I also noticed that some work has already been done, like the painted engine bay and the addition of headers with a dual exhaust system. Personally, I think this is a sign that someone already started upgrading or refreshing the car, but didn't take it all the way. That can be good or bad depending on how the next owner wants to approach it. From my perspective, this is not a show car or a fully restored collector piece. The seller even mentions it as a 20-foot car, which basically means it looks decent from a distance but may show imperfections up close. So I think buyers should expect a driver-level classic rather than something perfect. One thing I like is that Falcons like this are generally easy to work on. In my opinion, that makes it a good entry-level classic for someone who wants to learn or slowly build a car over time without dealing with overly complex systems. Overall, my opinion is that this 1963 Ford Falcon is a straightforward vintage project with some work already started. It's best suited for someone who wants a simple classic to enjoy, improve gradually, and keep as a relaxed weekend driver rather than aiming for a high-end show build. Number 13, 1967 Ford Falcon, offered at $25,500 and currently located in Charlotte, Iowa. In my opinion, this 1967 Ford Falcon looks like a simple, clean classic that is being presented more as a driver-quality car with some rarity appeal rather than a heavily documented or fully restored collector piece. The seller's description is short, but it still gives a general impression that the car is already in a usable and enjoyable condition. One of the main positives, in my view, is the manual transmission. In a lightweight car like the Falcon, a manual setup usually makes a big difference in driving enjoyment. It gives the car a more direct and engaging feel, especially compared to automatic versions, and it fits well with the Falcon's naturally simple and mechanical character. The mention that it drives out well and sounds good suggests that the car is not just a static restoration project but something that is already road-ready. From my perspective, that is often more valuable than cosmetic perfection because it means the car can be enjoyed immediately without needing major mechanical work. The seller also describes it as very rare, although no specific details are provided. In my opinion, that kind of statement should be taken carefully unless supported by production numbers, trim identification, or special factory options. However, even if it is not a highly documented rare model, clean and well-preserved Falcons from this era are becoming less common simply due to age and survival rates. With its green exterior and black interior, the car likely maintains a classic and understated appearance. From a styling standpoint, Falcons are not typically flashy cars, but that simplicity is part of their appeal. They tend to have clean lines and a lightweight, compact design that feels more focused on function than luxury. Overall, my opinion is that this 1967 Ford Falcon is best seen as an honest, straightforward classic that prioritizes driving experience over show-level restoration or high-end collectability. It appears to be a car that someone can enjoy as is, especially if they appreciate older Ford engineering and a more analog driving feel. At the asking price, it feels like it is positioned more toward enthusiasts who value simplicity, manual driving engagement, and classic Ford character rather than buyers looking for a highly documented or investment-grade muscle car. Number 14, 1966 Cadillac DeVille Sedan, offered at $25,000 and currently located in Cadillac, Michigan. From my perspective, this is one of those classic Cadillacs that clearly leans more into the custom cruiser lifestyle than strict factory originality, and honestly, that's where its appeal really comes from. The 1966 DeVille already starts with a strong foundation. These Cadillacs were built during an era when American luxury meant size, smoothness, and effortless V8 power. The 429 cubic inch engine paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission fits that identity perfectly. It's not about performance in a modern sense. It's about relaxed torque and that float down the road feeling these cars are known for. What stands out most to me is how extensively this car has been updated for comfort and style. The custom two-tone suede interior immediately changes the personality of the cabin. It shifts the car away from its original luxury trim identity and into something more personalized and modernized, closer to a show cruiser than a stock restoration. The 20-inch knockoff wire wheels with Vogue tires also push the same direction. In my opinion, this is a very intentional styling choice aimed at presence. It's the kind of setup that makes the car stand out at meets, especially in lowrider or custom classic circles where visual impact matters just as much as mechanical originality. I also notice that a lot of attention has been given to usability and entertainment. The trunk being finished and wired for an amp system, along with upgraded audio through an Alpine unit in the glove box, shows that this car is meant to be enjoyed while driving, not just displayed. It's built for cruising with music, comfort, and style. Mechanically, the seller mentions that the car runs and drives well, with supporting updates like a new exhaust system and a new battery. These are not just cosmetic upgrades. They suggest the car is currently in a usable condition, which is important for a custom build like this. A lot of modified classics look good but aren't always sorted mechanically, so that's a positive point here. The custom paint, done about 12 years ago, adds to the overall presentation. While it's not recent, it still contributes to the car's identity as a long-term custom rather than a fresh build. Combined with the interior and wheel setup, it creates a consistent theme rather than a mismatched collection of upgrades. From my point of view, this Cadillac sits in a very specific category. It's not a collector-grade restoration, and it's not trying to be. It's a personalized luxury cruiser that prioritizes comfort, appearance, and road presence over originality. At $25,000, I would say the value here depends heavily on how much someone appreciates the custom direction. For a buyer who wants a clean, original DeVille, this probably isn't the right example. But for someone who enjoys the custom Cadillac scene, wire wheels, suede interiors, and a strong street presence, this car fits that purpose well. Overall, my opinion is that this 1966 Cadillac DeVille is best seen as a lifestyle classic. It's built for cruising, showing off, and enjoying the feel of a big American V8 luxury car with a modern custom twist rather than factory correctness. For the right buyer, it delivers exactly that experience. Number 15, 1996 Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra SL Sedan 4D, offered at $500 and currently located in Portage, Michigan. In my opinion, this is very much a bottom-tier entry into the used car or project car world, and it's really only attractive for one of two reasons, either as a cheap parts donor or as a very hands-on mechanical project. The key detail here is simple: the engine is bad and needs replacement. That immediately defines the entire value of the car. The Cutlass Sierra itself isn't a performance or collector-focused vehicle. It was built as a practical, comfort-oriented family sedan during the 1990s, when GM was still producing straightforward, low-cost transportation. So even in good condition, it's not a car that carries high enthusiast value. That said, it was known for being relatively simple and easy to work on, which is one of the reasons some people still consider them as budget projects. With around 122,000 miles and 2 owners, the mileage is not unusually high for its age. But once the engine needs replacement, mileage becomes less important than the cost of repair versus the actual market value of the car. In most cases like this, the repair cost would exceed what the finished car is worth, which is why these listings usually stay in the $500 range. The fact that it has a clean title is actually one of the only strong positives here. At this price point, many cars are missing paperwork, salvaged, or have legal issues. A clean title at least keeps options open for someone who wants to repair it or even use it as a donor car. From a design perspective, the Cutlass Sierra represents very basic 1990s GM engineering, simple exterior styling, a comfort-focused interior, and a front-wheel drive layout. It was never meant to be exciting. It was meant to be dependable transportation for everyday use. That identity is still visible here, even in its non-running condition. Realistically, I don't see this as a restoration candidate unless someone has a very specific reason or emotional attachment to the model. The more practical use is probably parts harvesting or a very low-budget mechanical learning project where the owner doesn't mind putting in more work than the car is worth. So overall, my take is pretty straightforward. This 1996 Cutlass Sierra is less of a classic opportunity and more of a functional shell with a bad engine. At $500, it's priced accordingly, and its value really depends on whether someone needs parts or wants a very cheap starting point for a rebuild experiment.